Say hi to the people in the camera. Yo guys, welcome to RenderRam. My name is Vieco and today I'm gonna be talking about de-LUTing. De-LUTing is the term that I made up. I was generally trying to find if the process I'm gonna show you actually has a name. I couldn't find the name for it. So what is de-LUTing? De-LUTing is the process of removing a LUT from a texture. So whenever I generally do my renders, like interior renders, I always, in my tone mapping, I apply some sort of LUT. I also use some contrast, etc. But, you know, my main kind of color altering thing in my renders is a LUT, L-U-T, or LUT. But recently I had a scenario, it's not like I had it the first time, I had it a million times actually, where a client actually sent me a texture, this one. So he sent me this texture and he said, "Hi, can you put that texture on the sofa in your render?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And, you know, I imported the texture into Max, plugged it into my sofa, and the texture didn't really look like this. You know, like whenever you import a texture in Max, it never looks identical how you see it in Photoshop. In my case, it was mainly because of the LUT that I'm using, because the LUT is altering my colors, my contrasts, gammas, whatever. You know, it has some curves on it, you know, stuff. And at that point, I generally, you know, plugged in my color correction node, so I tried to fix the texture so that in my Max, it looks like this one in Photoshop, and I wasn't very successful, because of whatever I was trying to fix, some other things got destroyed. So like, for example, the red colors here were appearing like very yellowish or orangey in my renders. So when I got the red colors to look right, my greens were shifting in the other direction. Plus, my greens were much darker because of all the contrast that the LUT was giving me. So I ended up in Photoshop trying to pretty much fix all these parts, you know, like take away the yellow color from the reds so that in the render that red color can actually appear normal, etc, etc. So after some time, I generally realized what I'm doing. I was trying to generally fix the texture in Photoshop. I was pretty much removing the effect that the LUT was doing to my texture. I was trying to remove that effect in Photoshop so that when I load the texture in my Max, that texture actually looks correctly under that LUT that I was using. So yeah, I was pretty much trying to de-LUT my texture, or like kill the LUT from it. So in general, I was trying to see if there is a way how you can practically reverse the effect of your LUT so that I can apply it to my texture so that in render, when I apply an actual LUT, the image looks like I see it in Photoshop. I was generally trying to find an anti-LUT method, or reverse LUT, or de-LUT something. So then a good friend of mine called Patrick Pavlok, he came in and he said, "Yo, I think that can actually maybe be done in DaVinci Resolve." So we pretty much, both of us opened the DaVinci Resolve and we were playing with the settings. 3 nodes later, we created a de-LUTed LUT, or a reversed LUT. And the results were pretty amazing. So let me show you first how to create a de-LUT from your LUT, and then we will see some tests in Max, like how does that actually perform. In DaVinci Resolve, when you open it up, go to Fusion, here on the bottom, and here we're gonna create 3 nodes. Right-click, add tool, go to LUT, and click on the LUT cube creator. Now right-click again, add tool, go to color, and choose OCO file transform. Right-click again, add tool, go to LUT, and click LUT cube analyzer. And now this is the thing. Connect all of them, so just do it like this. So click on the OCO file transform on the right, click the browse button here, and choose the LUT that you're using. So I'm using the Daniel Reuter. Sorry, dude. I'm using this LUT. So I'm just gonna open that LUT. Okay, so I loaded that LUT into my OCO file transform. Now, when you are applying the LUTs here, you can see that the forward button is generally selected. That means that that LUT will be applied to something. But if you click on the reverse button, that LUT, or the effects of those LUTs, will be taken away from something. So I'm gonna click on the reverse button here. And now click on your LUT cube analyzer. Here, switch to the cube. And this is generally the area where you are gonna save your newly created LUT. So just click on the browse button here and just type the name of your new LUT. So this is gonna be Daniel Reuterschward LUT _ reverse. Save. And now just click on the right file. Now to test if the whole thing was working or not, I opened up my texture in Photoshop. I'm gonna add a color lookup. This will allow me to load in a LUT onto my texture. Here, I'm gonna load in my Daniel reverse LUT, and this is the effect that I got. So this is the negative effect of the LUT. Picture it like this. If a LUT has a property of adding plus 30 contrast, a negative LUT would add minus 30 contrast. So this is pretty much the opposite of what it was doing. But now to test if it really works, I'm gonna add another color lookup here, and I'm gonna load my actual LUT now. And this is the effect. Look at this. If I turn both of them off, there's no difference in the image. You know, what does that mean? That means that I have created a De-LUT, added LUT, and there is no change to my picture. Because look at this. If I just add the LUT on top of the image, this is how the image would look like. But when you add a de-LUTed texture in your render, your image is gonna look like this. It's gonna look like the actual texture that you see in Photoshop. Now, let's see if this bad boy actually works in Max or not. Now, I'm gonna be covering how to apply this in Fstorm and in Corona, because there is a difference, and it's actually a very big difference. So let's start with the Corona. So in my Max, I got these 3 pillows, and in render, they look like this. When I compare them to how the texture looked like, you can see that, you know, all the colors are off. Now, how do you apply the whole de-LUTing thing in Corona? Open your material editor. Here I have those 3 materials for the 3 cushions, and these are just, you know, these are not de-LUTed textures, these are actually original textures. But the thing that you can do in Corona, if you create a Corona color correct, the color correct actually has a LUT section. So you can load in a LUT here. So I'm gonna enable that. Click on the none, and I'm gonna load in our Daniel Rotuschward LUT reverse. I'm gonna apply it to the pillow on the right for a start. So if I plug this here and then plug this here, I'm getting this. Remember how I said that de-LUTing does completely opposite of what the LUT does? The LUT that I'm using is actually brightening up the image a lot, and it actually made the texture darker a lot, right? But the main thing is, all the contrasts and color shifts and everything, all that is fixed, you know, within this De-LUT. So the only thing that I need to do now is pretty much just increase the brightness. So let's keep it like, 0.3. And now when you compare that to my, you know, texture cheat sheet here, you can actually see that these look pretty damn close. They're, well, generally almost the same. Now, I'm saying almost for a reason, because in tone mapping, I'm not just using simple exposure and LUT and that's it. I do have some contrast. People usually have a lot more other effects, like some highlight compressions or curves or, you know, various things. This effect will only target the LUT. But since the LUT is always the majority of the whole tone mapping, it generally fixes a lot of issues that you have. Okay, so now I'm just gonna clone this color correct 2 times more, and I'm gonna plug these other textures into it. So this one and this one. And now let's see the result. Our renders are looking like this. And now when you compare them, they look pretty damn close. Like, look at this one, look at this. It's practically the same texture. See, that's the magic of de-LUTing the images. You're pretty much avoiding what the LUT does here. By the way, I also got one comment for the whole technique. I got a comment like, then why use LUTs at all if you're trying to avoid them? Well, that's the thing. I like how the LUT affects the lighting of the whole scene, contrasts of the whole scene, how it affects like the shadows and highlights and all that. And all those things are preserved. It's just that the texture data for this, you know, object will be affected, but all the shadows dropping onto it are gonna be LUT affected shadows, right? So that's generally the purpose of this whole thing. So yeah, in Corona, just plug in the Corona color correct and load your LUT here. Where in Fstorm, so I'm in Fstorm now. In Fstorm, the process is a little bit more complicated because Fstorm color correction does not have an option to load in a LUT. So I pretty much need to open a texture and save it as a de-LUTed texture. I need to save this as a JPEG or PNG or, you know, as a texture file. I need to save this version like that, and I need to load it in Fstorm like that. So as you can see here, I got like all the images that are connected to the color correct. those are de-LUTed textures. You see here it says 006 de-LUT, but when I click on this one, it's just 006, right? So all the bottom ones are the de-LUTed textures. But look at the effect. Like if I take, I don't know, this one or the pillow on the right, this is the original texture. I'm just gonna plug the original in. Look at the difference. This is the part that LUT does to you, and you don't have to deal with it if you just de-LUT it like this. Again, if I compare things, look at the result. It's freaking the same. Look here. All the things are like bang on there. Look at this. And I'm using a LUT that affects contrasts and everything and color shifts, and this is pretty much avoiding it. Now, obviously, when it comes to Fstorm and Corona, there's our pluses and minuses. For Fstorm, you actually need to save a de-LUTed version of the texture and then load it into Fstorm. With Corona, you can just apply the LUT to your bitmap through color correction node, and you don't have to modify any textures. But in general, this is the thing. This is the whole thing that I wanted to show you guys. I was pretty amazed, like when I realized that a freaking de-LUTing can be done and that it doesn't affect. I mean, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? You know, like if you're applying a LUT onto something, that LUT is going to change things, but you need things to be for that one object. You need things to be, you know, as the original is. You gotta have a way to keep the original thing, you know. That's what you can do with this, and this is the amazing part about it. So if you want to test how de-LUTing works, you can go to Evermotion website and you can check out their Arc Models Volume 290. It's dining furniture. Look at these bad boys. I can do a lot of de-LUTing there. Look at this. Like, you get this pack, you get all of these props. It's not just, you know, like everything. Table settings, like dining furniture, textures, everything is there. So head over to Evermotion website and check out this deal, because their new Arc Models Volume 290 is now at 25% off. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Evermotion, thank you for sponsoring this video, and see you in the next one. Bye!